let's go to the book. I first noticed my father's tattoo the summer he returned from the Korean War. We had just moved from Virginia to the Marine base at Camp Pendleton, California. Mother had asked me to awaken him from an afternoon nap, and as I entered their bedroom and stood beside his sleeping figure, my eyes were drawn to the blue globe and its anchor on his right upper arm. When I extended my hand to trace the outline with my finger, he awakened. And acquiescing to the curiosity of a 5-year-old, he playfully flexed his bicep and tousled my hair with his free left hand. I had no idea that the object of my fascination was the emblem of the Marine Corps, the organization to which my father had already dedicated more than 30 of his 53 years. I did know that it must be important because my mother had a piece of gold and silver jewelry in the shape of my father's tattoo, and she wore it frequently when she got dressed up. Later I learned that mother loved the gold and silver pin and despised the tattoo. There were other things I noticed about my father in the summer and fall of 1951, a time during which he made a special effort to be accessible to his only son and to make up for his absence during the war. My father had been promoted to the rank of brigadier general after leading the 1st Marine Regiment of the 1st Marine Division in the retreat from the Chosin Reservoir through Coteau just before Christmas 1950. The breakout came to be regarded as a classic in the annals of modern American military warfare for his role in holding together the rear guard during some of the bloodiest fighting of the war. My father was recognized for his heroic leadership, and his elevation to flag rank was assured. After the engagement ended, mother told me father had escaped from a trap set by the Red Chinese, but I could not envision his being caught in a device similar to the one I baited with lettuce in the apple orchard behind my grandmother's home in Virginia, where we waited out the war. He had sent me war mementos, 2 Korean swords, an enemy helmet and bugle, and several medals, which arrived in silk-lined blue boxes. Affectionately known among his beloved Marines as the Old Man or Chesty for the way he carried himself when marching, he must have known that combat taking place on the frozen wastes and ridges of Korea would be his last, and even then he was passing on to me the proud traditions of his profession. For my 6th birthday, near the end of the summer, he gave me a .22 caliber single-shot rifle, which he had modified by sawing the stock in half to accommodate my narrow shoulders and short arms. On the butt, he had stenciled my name, Lewis B. Puller Jr., and the added touch filled me with pride of ownership and a certainty that I had the best father in the world. After we had practiced on paper targets and tin cans, he took me into the brown hills around our home in search of California jackrabbits. At first, I struggled to match his long-legged gait, but after he realized that I could not keep up, he slowed his pace and began circumventing the steeper hills. Even then, I tired easily, and my aching legs diverted my attention from our elusive quarry. Throughout the several months that we hunted together in Camp Pendleton countryside, I never once came close to hitting a rabbit, but my father puffed silently on his pipe each time I missed, and on those occasions when he bagged game, I was allowed to carry our trophies the last 100 yards back home. In early February, as my twin sister Martha and I were beginning the second half of our first year of grade school, and our older sister Virginia was seemingly an adult 6th grader, a parade was held to honor my father's heroism at the Chosin Reservoir. I was permitted to go along with mother, and she held my hand as we stood at the end of a sun-drenched parade ground and waited for the ceremony to end. When the last drum beat sounded and the standard bearers had retired the colors, my father strode from the field on which he had just been honored and knelt briefly to let me view the object of the morning's pageantry, a gold star in lieu of his 5th Navy Cross, the most ever earned by any one Marine and our country's second highest award for valor, now joined the panoply of ribbons that covered most of his left chest. The moment of that frozen instant more than 3 decades ago is as fresh and firmly fixed in my mind today as any of my most vivid boyhood recollections. At Camp Pendleton, Father commanded the 3rd Marine Brigade and was charged with training fresh troops for the denouement being played out along the 38th parallel in Korea. On several occasions, he and his Jeep driver, Sergeant Orville Jones, took me with them to observe war games and field exercises in Pendleton's scrub-dotted boondocks. I was naturally fascinated by the maneuvers of khaki-clad Marines and the smoke and thunder of mock warfare. So, it's a beautiful picture. It's a beautiful picture. And he's home from war. Luckily, they must have had their kids pretty late because he's young and Chesty's, I think, 45 at this point or something like that, 45 or 46. So had at least Louis Jr. when he was, 40 or something like that. And this is like every kid's, would be stoked on this dad. And, I know when my son was like this age, I would bring him sometimes to our training sites and he would shoot machine guns and huck grenades and stuff like that, and he'd watch all the maneuvers. So let me tell you, 6-year-old boys, they like that kind of thing, I promise you. All right, back to the book. In August 1953, with the Korean War ended, Father was promoted to Major General, and the sign in our front yard was repainted to reflect his new rank. We had to mute our celebration because the general who lived across the street was not selected for promotion. But all in all, times were good and our lives were happy. Father had sufficiently decompressed from his Korean War experience that he was no longer making the kinds of inflammatory statements about the conduct of the war that had gotten him into so much trouble in the past, including one that haunted him for years to the effect that whiskey and beer would make troops fight better than ice cream and soft training. The promotion to Major General was proof that he was on track toward at least a possible shot at becoming Commandant of the Marine Corps and fulfilling a lifelong ambition. So the Commandant of the Marine Corps is the senior ranking Marine, and that's, I guess, obviously his goal, or was his goal. All right. He was ordered by the Commandant. Now, I covered some of this in the first book, but he was ordered by the Commandant of the Marine Corps to report to Bethesda, Maryland Naval Hospital for further evaluation. After 2 weeks in the hospital, he was found unfit for duty and scheduled to go before a retirement board in early August. He returned home angry and bitter, and perhaps because he couldn't discuss the perceived unfairness of his situation with his fellow Marines, he vented his frustrations on Mother. He had felt from the time of his illness that a courtier of senior officers in the Marine Corps was jealous of his celebrity and would use the stroke as a pretext to end his career. And that's what is not mentioned in the first book, is that it was a minor stroke that he had had. He viewed his summons to Bethesda after a board had already passed on his fitness report as part of a conspiracy to do him in, and was even critical of the Commandant of the Marine Corps. I was never told what words passed between my father and the Commandant while he was away from us in Bethesda, but given Father's outspokenness and his sense of injustice being done to him, I'm certain that they were less than cordial. General Lemuel C. Shepard, the Commandant, had also been my godfather, and prior to Father's stroke, he regularly sent me birthday presents. After Father came back from Bethesda, I never received another gift or communication from my godfather, and for years I did not understand if or why he had abandoned me. So, I'm sure Chesty let the Commandant know what was up and what he thought about what was going on. So, as we know from the first book, Marine, The Life of Chesty Puller, that after he was retired from the Marine Corps, they went to Chesty's wife's hometown. Here we go, back to the book. The sleepy little Virginia town of Saluda, although straddling a major north-south thoroughfare, was no more than a crossroads with a dozen or so small businesses and 50 or 60 houses. Had it not been my mother's birthplace, it would have seemed strange. It would have seemed a same strange setting for a man famous as my father to have picked to spend his retirement years. There was so little industry and so few business opportunities that most of the young men and women moved away as soon as they finished school, and the inhabitants who remained were either old or unenthusiastic about moving on. Without a support staff, our lives became much less pampered. And for the first time, Martha and I were faced with household chores. Prior to Father's retirement, I never made my own bed or shined my own shoes, and now I was expected to help maintain a home. There were times early on as I struggled beneath a load of firewood or raked leaves into a pile for burning when I thought what a downward turn of our fortunes had taken. Gradually, however, I began to take pride in my responsibilities, and as the house and grounds began responding to our nurturing, I felt real accomplishment. We never talked about Father's stroke after we moved to Saluda, but there was an unstated premise that he was unable to do any strenuous work around the house, and I tried to step into the void. I puffed with pride to think that I was, in a sense, becoming the man of the house. So, little boy's stepping it up